Attention, this man's name is Gao Yi. He eavesdropped on the main road and went fishing in the restricted area. Claiming invincible, pushing the world horizontally. Gao Yi. I originally planned to get along with you as an ordinary cultivator, but what I got in return was estrangement. Stop pretending, I am the ultimate thief. I'll show my hand. I want all the recommended comments for my collection keywords of the novel. No pop-ups in the forbidden area of Skyward Theft, complete collection download of TXT in the forbidden area of Skyward Theft, latest chapter reading in the forbidden area of Skyward Theft. Chapter 1. The End of the Ancient Era, Seeking Collection and Recommendation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The End of the Ancient Era, Seeking Collection and Recommendation, over 100,000 years ago, accompanied by the enthronement of the last supreme figure of the ancient era, the flourishing ancient era of millions of years came to an end. The advent of the end of the Dharma era led the ancient tribes to gamble everything on the future of millions of years, and to self-proclaim themselves as divine beings. Beidu Dong Huang, Guanxia Dong Tian after crossing over, Gao Yi, who had transformed back into a teenager, looked like she was only 11 or 12 years old. Lips red and teeth white, incredibly tender, accompanied by growing up again, now 3 years have passed in the blink of an eye. After a long journey of twists and turns, Zhonggeoi embarked on the path of cultivation, and it took her a considerable amount of time to realize that she had crossed the star of burial of the emperor. Like the gears of fate starting to turn, he made remarkable progress with astonishing talent. Although there were no physical cheats to help him, his amazing cultivation speed made the elders of Guanxia Cave believe that his future was limitless, and he has been cultivated to this day. After 2.5 years of cultivation, and recently breaking through the 5 heavens of the Tao Palace and becoming a 4 extremes cultivator, it is finally time to leave. Gao Yi, with a complex mood, stood in the mountains and forests, looking at the continuous palace not far away, gazing at the rosy sky. Thousands of thoughts floated in his heart, and he couldn't help feeling a little sad. I don't know if there's still a chance to come back after this trip. Outside the Taichu penalty area, it was like a red demonic earth stained with blood covering countless miles. Gao Yi strolled through the wilderness, gazing into the interior of the forbidden zone from a distance. Unfortunately, even from a distance, he couldn't see through this ancient forbidden zone at all. Is it the Taichu ancient mine? It makes my scalp tingle from such a distance. Gao Yi, with a solemn expression on his face, couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the forbidden area that had existed since an unknown time. Forget it, business matters. Without much emotion, Gao Yi began to search for a temporary resting place on this land. Not long ago, Gao Yi arrived in the northern regions from the Guanxia Cave, and without stopping, he was ready to start looking for an opportunity to try his luck. As soon as he stepped onto the path of cultivation, Gao Yi would hear the sound of preaching coming from somewhere unknown during each practice. Now, more than 2 years have passed, and it can be considered that we have figured out where the preaching voice comes from. Dao me, fleeting me, id Gao Yi is confident that he can hear others' understanding of the Tao in their own selves, but it is also possible that someone else's, Dao I, will recite scriptures for the present, id, in the future. In other words, Gao Yi can observe the fruits of others, which is either a talent or a cheat bestowed upon them after crossing time. Why say no when Tianyu takes a shortcut instead of taking the blame? Within a radius of over 100,000 miles, it was difficult to see a single figure. Climbing up a low barren mountain outside the Taichu penalty area, Gao Yi casually found a flat ground and sat cross-legged. According to the pattern discovered by Gao Yi, his ability always locks in the existence with the highest cultivation level nearby, and as his cultivation level increases, his ability range also increases. Now, perhaps he can cover the Taichu ancient mine. That is to say, the ability to activate this time is likely to directly hear about the understanding of the Tao in the forbidden area. Eavesdropping on the supreme Tao is no less than reading the imperial scriptures left by them, which is undoubtedly much more useful than finding some master. Is there anyone in the world who understands Tao better than the Supreme One in the Forbidden Area? The sound of Tao singing appeared during Gao Yi's practice, far exceeding any preaching he had heard so far, making Gao Yi unable to understand and somewhat immersed. I don't know which Supreme Tao it is, but there's no need to explore, it doesn't matter who it is. I don't know how long it took, but when I slowly regained my senses, Gao Yi realized that the sky had already darkened. Even the cultivators outside the Taichu penalty area at night were shivering, and the eerie atmosphere made Gao Yi shudder. Slowly gazing at the Taichu penalty area, Gao Yi felt a bit hesitant to continue practicing in this area, fearing that there might be a crisis of some evil sections. With his current strength, provoking the presence in the penalty area is undoubtedly seeking death. No one knows if the presence inside the penalty area will come out. You should know that there are not only the Supreme Ones in the penalty area, but also their minions outside the ancient mine. Not to mention that only a few 100,000 years have passed since the ancient times, when ruthless people are absent and have never been born, who can intimidate the penalty area even though it is millions of years away from the Golden Age. Thinking about this place, Gao Yi no longer stays, but sets up a divine rainbow and runs away directly. After flying for half an hour, Gao Yi finally saw the campsite not far away with continuous lights. The bustling campsite was filled with people who had come to the northern region to work hard to gather resources. This campsite was specifically established by the Tai sect to gather resources, and Gao Yi is now one of the guardians of this campsite. Gao Yi fell from the sky and saw several cultivators of different ages already waiting for him, knowing that he might want to ask himself where he went in the afternoon. "Where have you been, little Taoist?" I saw an old man dressed in simple clothes, looking at Gao Yi and asking. Gao Yi was well prepared for the inquiry and pretended to be guilty, saying, "I heard that the Taichu Forbidden Area is the most ferocious life forbidden area in the eastern wilderness. I couldn't help but go and take a look. I forgot the time for a while, and I promise I won't do it again next time." The old man was somewhat surprised and couldn't help but turn his head to look at his companions. After making eye contact, he became somewhat scared and said, "Little Taoist, you may not know the danger of the Taichu Forbidden Area. That place is a magical land, so don't approach it easily. If you provoke the presence in the Forbidden Area, the entire camp may be in trouble." A middle-aged man in the back couldn't help but say, "You're not afraid of death, and coming back alive is considered lucky." The other cultivators couldn't help but shake their heads, lamenting that young people are really not afraid of death. Gao Yi looked at the faces of the few people and could only reluctantly continue to guarantee that there would be no next time, which allowed them to calm down. The elderly leader watched as Gao Yi returned unscathed without further ado, without holding him accountable for his absenteeism. He instructed Gao Yi not to take any further risks and led a group of cultivators back to the camp. The crowd in the camp has not yet rested, and many people are still eating dinner around the campfire. Looking at the roasted lamb on the shelf, Gao Yi also wanted to take a bite. Amidst the bonfire, Gao Yi watched as the flames ate lamb and listened to the many people happily talking about how many sources they had harvested today. I couldn't help but think in my heart whether or not I wanted to learn source art. There are countless treasures hidden in the divine source of this world, and it is a pity not to learn some source magic. But now whether Duanda has written the book of source heaven in a certain reincarnation is an unknown number, and ordinary source spells are also not very useful. But if we can find Duanda, maybe we can also catch some treasures. The fat man has accumulated a treasure for many years, and it's not an exaggeration to say it's a divine treasure. After dinner, Gao Yi returned to her own room and began to meditate and practice. Closing my eyes and reminiscing about today's gains, the supreme understanding of the Tao opened my eyes greatly to Gao Yi. By analogy, stones from other mountains can be used to attack jade, let alone the understanding of the supreme Tao. It is not certain who is stone and who is jade. Just this harvest made Gao Yi digest it for a long time. Gao Yi estimated that he could temporarily avoid adventuring in the Taichu penalty area. There is currently no such thing as a Holy Land family in Donghuang. The two mother scriptures of Sun and Thieveing have not been lost, and there are sects with some origins. The Guanxia cave heaven is not bad, and what is passed down in the sect is the Thieveing emperor scripture, but unfortunately there are no taboo chapters. Nowadays, Gao Yi is also proud of himself. If it weren't for the taboo chapters in the Thieveing emperor's classic, it would be considered the beginning of the children of the ancient aristocratic family. Being content and not taking risks is also a kind of wisdom. As the night deepened, there was gradually no sound in the camp. The people who had been busy all day fell asleep, and the day passed like this. In the next few days, Gao Yi will be practicing while guarding these source collectors. It's not good, it's not good. The mine is dead. Taoist priests, hurry up and take a look. The panicked voice woke Gao Yi up, and he quickly got up and rushed out of the room. He saw the panicked Kaiyuan person in the center of the camp, and couldn't help but rush forward, saying, "What's going on? Speak slowly." The person from Kaiyuan also calmed down when he saw several cultivators appearing in the camp one after another. He swallowed his saliva and exclaimed with lingering fear, "It's the mine to the west." A few brothers screamed from below just now, and soon there was no sound. "If I don't see anything right, I'll come back and report it. I'm afraid something terrible has happened. Come with me to see where the ancient calamity came from. Newcomers are really helpless, let's collect some balls, can you stop jumping and keep an eye on it?" End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Ancient Misfortune, Seeking Collection and Recommendation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Ancient Misfortune, Seeking Collection and Recommendation. The roof made of wood and soil blocks the deep mine entrance, blocking out rainwater and sunlight. The entrance under the ceiling has been emitting a strange and demonic aura since the incident. A group of source miners stood far outside the ceiling, afraid to speak as they watched the quiet mine cave. For a moment, the scene fell into a eerie silence. The quiet mining cave has long been regarded by everyone as a demon cave, afraid of causing trouble by the eerie creatures in the cave. Upon receiving the news, a group of cultivators immediately set out. The first to arrive, Elder Zhao of the Tai sect, did not land. He hung in mid-air and carefully looked at the nearby mine cave, where the demonic aura emanating from the cave entrance made even the cultivators feel inexplicable infiltration. And the group of cultivators who arrived later, seeing the eerie scene at the scene, also began to urge the surrounding Kaiyuan people to leave quickly and not make any noise. After a while, watching the many gatherers leave, Elder Zhao said to his companions, "Oldly, let's take action. I saw that the Tai sect elder named Lao Li didn't talk nonsense, just shook his hand, and a grass chicken was thrown into the mine. Goo-goo." The grass chicken fell into the mine, but with just a few calls, there was no movement. "Oh no, this is probably a living creature," said Elderly, as he watched the grass chicken fall into the mine and die in the blink of an eye. He couldn't help but feel a bit worried and couldn't help but say to everyone. Elder Zhao, however, was somewhat skeptical as to why the living creatures in the mine would not come out. If anyone is truly an ancient royal family and accidentally dug out from the source of gods, how can they survive now? After years of searching for sources in the northern regions, he felt that what was dug up in the mine was not the remains of ancient creatures, but their weapons. He has seen too much of this kind of thing, far more experienced than Elderly who only came recently. Elder Zhao turned around and looked at the crowd with different expressions, his face unchanged and his heart clear. At a critical moment, he couldn't mess around on his own. He said directly, "Don't panic, it can't be an ancient creature, otherwise we won't have a chance. Don't mess around on our own." "But what should we do?" "Let's just leave it alone," one of the cultivators couldn't help but speak. Gao Yi, who had a strange expression on his face, couldn't help but look at the crowd who were starting to discuss. He was a bit amused and couldn't help but speak up, "The situation in the mine is unknown, why don't we wait and talk? I think it might have come too early, and the evil energy in the mine may not have dissipated." Upon hearing this, everyone also agreed for a moment. After thinking for a moment, Elder Zhao didn't hesitate and said, "It's indeed possible. Since that's the case, let's spend some time like this, throw a chicken every half hour, and then make plans at sunset. It's still some time before noon, so it's a bit too late to wait until sunset." Gao Yi had some concerns and couldn't help but think that if the mine cave were really an ancient creature, it might have recovered quite a bit by sunset. However, seeing everyone nodding in agreement with Elder Zhao's words, he couldn't help but feel a headache whether to say it or not. Cultivators are naturally afraid of death, so it's better to do less than to do more. After all, besides the 3 elders of the Tai sect, many other cultivators here are hired to practice and are not willing to give their all. As everyone walked towards the nearby area to rest, Gao Yi also took a break together. An hour later, another chicken was thrown into the mine. No one could have imagined that when the grass chicken fell into the mine, the entrance of the mine would explode, and a large hand would extend and crush it into pieces. Accompanied by the soaring momentum, the creature with wings on its back and horns on its head directly exploded and shattered the ceiling, rising from the mine. The imposing aura on the spot was too intimidating, and the almost completely humanoid ancient creatures started out as powerful beings in Sendai, which really pierced the sky. "Nima, I've encountered something big." Even when the incident occurred, Gao Yi had already risen to the sky, and before he could finish speaking, he had already flown far away, hating himself for not having many wings. The monks present almost immediately screamed in agony, unable to react. In a moment, the ancient creatures had already killed several people in a row, and their figures shook like the arrival of a demon god. After killing several people in a row, the ancient creatures let out a loud roar as they watched the remaining cultivators fleeing from the road. The countless divine lights around them surged in a dazzling manner. The ancient creatures, whose divine radiance surged all over their bodies, did not make much movement. With their wings spread out, they had already soared into the sky. With a cold expression, their large hands pushed forward, causing the earth to crack. A group of cultivators fell to the ground and were beaten into flesh and mud. At this moment, Gao Yi dare not stay any longer and run for miles without stopping. Seeing that the ancient creature had killed itself in just a moment, Gao Yi directly took out the Xuanyu platform and without hesitation, launched the crossing of the void. The sky was filled with divine light sweeping towards Gao Yi, almost hitting him. The Xuanyu platform, which remained in place, was crushed into powder by the divine light, and layers of void were rippled and folded. A single blow failed to achieve success, and the ancient creatures saw Gao Yi escape. They couldn't help but raise their heads to the sky and roar in anger, causing the surrounding earth to tremble uncontrollably. Amidst his anger, the ancient creature turned around and saw the nearby campsite. His face changed wildly as he continued to rage, and he immediately flapped his wings and charged towards it, causing a bloody storm. Gao Yi, who had escaped thousands of miles, fell from the void and didn't make a stop, only to cross several tens of thousands of miles before finally feeling relieved. "Your father and I have run so far, let's see if you can catch up." Thinking about how hard he had studied the formation patterns in order to get close to the penalty area, today he came in handy. Gao Yi couldn't help but marvel at his wit. "This Xuanyu platform is truly worth it. I escaped, but unfortunately, all the cultivators have already died, and the people who collected the source are probably already unlucky." Looking at the rapidly changing environment around him, Gao Yi couldn't help but feel lost and decided to walk towards the east. Along the way, he traveled dozens of oases and unknowingly passed more than a month. Along the way, Gao Yi had already heard that there was an ancient creature near the Taichu ancient mine that killed anyone it saw. In addition to the mining area of the Tai sect, several inherited mining areas were also washed with blood. Subsequently, these inheritors prepared their hands and went there to kill this ancient creature, but the current outcome is unknown. After the enthronement of the Holy Emperor of Dozhan, the end of the Dharma era, which lasted for over 100,000 years, finally showed signs of the past. Nowadays, there are also countless saints on the earth, so there is no fear of a mere ancient creature. Several days later, in an oasis called Qingfeng, Gao Yi sat in the tea shop, listening to the voices of nearby cultivators discussing and becoming somewhat engrossed. Have you heard about it? Are you talking about Mount Guhuang? I've heard about it a long time ago. A group of people are digging for the source of gods over there these days. How brave they are. Who said it's not? I don't know which way the immortals came from. They dared to dig the tomb of the immortal emperor, they really ate the fairy's gall. Hee, brotherly, be cautious in your words, haha. Watching two men dressed up as monks whispering to each other not far away, Gao Yi was taken aback. The ancient times have only passed for a few 100,000 years, and the Beidou people today still speak ancient sayings passed down from the mythological era. The various aspects of the ancient times have not yet disappeared into the dust of history like the ancient times. It is truly shocking that some people dare to dig the tomb of the immortal emperor now. It can be understood that some people dared to dig in the Wuxia era. After all, ancient Huangshan has changed its name in history. But now the reputation of the immortal emperor still lingers in the eastern wilderness, and it's hard to imagine anyone daring to take action. Suddenly, Gao Yi inexplicably remembered that the ancient times had just come to an end, and the immortal emperor hid. Perhaps he can allow himself to enter the Purple Mountain and let the heavenly prince move his position in the eyes of the Creator. Seeking points for collection, Ball now, seeking collection recommendations, end of this chapter. Chapter 3. Outside the Ancient Emperor Mountain, seeking collection and recommendation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Outside the Ancient Emperor Mountain, seeking collection and recommendation. Looking at the vast and towering peaks before him, Gao Yi couldn't help but feel a sense of leisurely longing. In ancient times, Wuxia could allow the living emperor undead to remove his coffin from the Ancient Emperor Mountain. Can he let the crown prince remove his egg? After careful consideration, Gao Yi came to the conclusion that only by completely annihilating the 8 divine generals, killing the immortal empress, suppressing the immortal Taoist on the immortal mountain, and forcefully piercing through everything with the power of the heavens can we succeed. But if he has such incredible combat power, what kind of divine eye does he need? It's a bit difficult. After thinking for a moment, Gao Yi could only temporarily put aside this plan. The plan was a bit difficult. The 9 Dragons Archguard has a pearl, and no one in the world can move with such terrain. On a low mountain, a man stood not far from Gao Yi, looking at the nearby ancient imperial mountain and couldn't help but sigh, with several people standing behind him. That person is quite tall and dressed in a black robe, with a resolute face. He is a middle-aged man, but he doesn't know his exact age. He just arrived here a while ago and came here to pay tribute to the past and present like a high-ranking official. The following few people are quite young, between the ages of 17 and 18, with a calm demeanor, and at first glance, they are the children of the big school. Upon hearing the man speak, Gao Yi couldn't help but say, throughout history, who could have touched the burial ground of the immortal emperor? I heard that the holy emperor of Dozhan only smashed the immortal emperor's dojo over 100,000 years ago. The so-called holy emperor seems to be inferior to the emperor. The person seemed to be interested and couldn't help but turn his head to look at him. Seeing Gao Yi's appearance at the age of 15 or 16, he was somewhat surprised and said, I dare not say anything about his combat power, but looking back at the past and present, there are indeed people who dare to touch the emperor's burial ground. Do you know, little brother? Gao Yi looked at the man with a somewhat playful expression and said, indeed, if Emperor Zun were still alive, perhaps all these 9 dragons and pearls would have been shattered to the ground. The man smiled knowingly. Few people know about the events of the end of mythology, and the man can be considered to have passed down a long time. It is also rare for him to meet people who can discuss ancient and modern times. Little Taoist, I don't know which immortal mountain he is practicing in. I can't talk about Xianshan, let's not mention the sect, it's just that I know a bit more. I'm under Yi Fan, I don't know how to call you sir. I'm Xia Jingxian, these are all my junior brothers behind me, the man said humbly as he looked at Gao Yi with some politeness. After Jingxian finished speaking, he saw the boys behind him walking out and introducing their names to Gao Yi. I have met my fellow Taoist, said a handsome young man from behind, clasping his fists in front of Gao Yi. Gao Yi also repeatedly bowed back. However, the name Daoyan sounds a bit familiar, Gao Yi couldn't help but ponder. Little Taoist Yi fan, have you also heard that someone is here to obtain the source of gods when you come to Guhuang Mountain? Jingxian didn't beat around the bush and looked at Gao Yi and said directly. Gao Yi was also taken aback and quickly looked up at Jingxian. He didn't hesitate and said directly, not bad. I just heard about this and came to take a look. After all, it's such an interesting thing. It's a pity not to come and take a look. Jingxian laughed as he listened to Gao Yi's answer and said, it's really eye-opening to find the source of the gods in the ancient imperial mountain. I passed by here and was also surprised when I heard about it. After Jingxian answered, he held on to Gao Yi and chatted for a while. Seeing that Gao Yi was only a year old with his hair tied, he was already a four-pole cultivator. Moreover, he repeatedly said that his talent is amazing and he will surely achieve something in the future. Gao Yi doesn't have much pride. Practice has always been from easy to difficult, but this achievement is not enough. Gao Yi just wants to reach the end of this immortal road, see the prosperity of the world, live to the future, and witness all the wonders of the world. The two couldn't help but hate each other for meeting too late, and then Jingxian invited Gao Yi to take a walk together, ready to see who exactly was preparing to move the ancient imperial mountain. The grand momentum of the 9 Dragon Arches Guard is indeed not something that ordinary people can move. In a busy campsite, the foragers are busy at the foot of a nearby mountain. Countless wooden and stone piles up together, and some of the already built mine entrances already have the presence of miners. Teams of cultivators walked back and forth, with unknown mythical beast flags erected high at the entrance of the camp. Gao Yi stood on a nearby mountain, overlooking the entire campsite. The busy scene made people feel that these people were very efficient, and the team of cultivators was even more heart-stopping. This force has a lot of influence. Jingxian looked at the nearby camp and was somewhat surprised. There were many cultivators here, among which there were even powerful figures who appeared, and perhaps some important figures had not appeared. Perhaps the entire Beidou does not have such a power. Although these cultivators are strong, they are not qualified to move the burial ground of the ancient emperor. Gao Yi's vision was very sharp, and no matter how many powerful they were not qualified to move Purple Mountain. If these people are not fools, they should have a backup, but it's unclear whether they are the great sage or the quasi-emperor behind them. Beidou may not necessarily have such strong individuals, this group of people may come from outside the region. Not bad, this group of people comes from the ancient star of the Honghuang era, and their flag is the Qi dragon. The knowledgeable Jingxian didn't show any interest and turned to look at Gao Yi and said directly. Jingxian, with an inexplicable smile on his face, looked at Gao Yi, who was instantly shocked. Honghuang ancient star Qilong, isn't that Earth? Qilong may not be one of the remnants of Kunlun, right? Gao Yi felt a bit dazed for a moment, then suddenly turned his head and looked at Jingxian in surprise. He was afraid that this person had a complicated background. Don't be surprised. I have been to many places with my master. Although I have never been to this ancient star, I have occasionally read a few words in the book. Jingxian looked at Gao Yi's expression with satisfaction, feeling inexplicable comfort. Gao Yi looked at the pride of others and felt somewhat speechless. As a traveler, I was sanctified in front of someone else, and they all pretended to be me. So what are I pretending to be? Gao Yishu squinted his eyes and couldn't help but ask curiously, Brother Dao, I admire your knowledge and knowledge. I don't know where you came from. Have you ever heard of a star field called Eternal? Jingxian didn't hide anything and spoke openly. Eternity, Gao Yi whispered, instantly recalling everything and inexplicably recalling a sentence. The former Dao Yen is still alive, but he may not dare to venture into the ancient mines of Taichu amidst a great shock in his heart. Gao Yi pretended to be a bit confused and said, "Eternal, I have heard a little but only know far away. It seems like the only way for the Beidou to test the ancient path." Don't worry, if one day you step onto the ancient path of starry sky, there will naturally be a chance to explore the truth. Jing Xian smiled twice and looked at Gao Yi, saying. There was a hint of hospitality in his words, and even a few young men behind Jing Xian couldn't help but look at him with a friendly expression. Being in a foreign land and having someone who knew his hometown in front of him couldn't help but feel a bit happy. The young man named Dao Yen also turned his head to look at Wei Ping. Gao Yi couldn't help but look at him, and in between, Dao Yen smiled kindly at him. Gao Yi, who was somewhat embarrassed, felt a little embarrassed. He had just started preparing his plan, and the smile made his hair tingle. No matter whether this young man is the Dao Yen who can prove himself to be emperor or not, he will not stay behind in the struggle between the emperor and the road. In an instant, Gao Yi no longer thought much and continued to communicate with a few people. During the conversation between the two sides, the sun was soaring high. Jing Xian, along with a few junior brothers, saw that it was getting late and said goodbye to Gao Yi directly. He made an appointment to have a big drink if we meet again next time. Watching the shadows of the few people gradually elongate, Gao Yi couldn't help but gaze at the back of the young man. There is only one person who can be honored in the Emperor Road battle, and I will not let him down in this lifetime. Ball, let's have some collection recommendations. It's really difficult for Mengxin to write a novel. 2,000 words can save 3 or 4 hours. It's really not that I type slowly, organizing words is too brain-burning. End of this chapter. Chapter 4 Thinking about what Yi Fan would do. Seeking collections and recommendations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Thinking about what Yi Fan would do. Seeking collections and recommendations. A few days ago, Gao Yi felt a sense of crisis from his observations on Mount Guhuang. I spent the next few days inquiring about the news, preparing to see if there was a chance to fish in troubled waters. After a busy schedule, Gao Yi, who had not gained much, didn't understand why the major sects of Beidou, which currently exist, had no movement in the face of these outsiders. Especially after discovering that these Kunlun remnants were only gathering resources and did not act recklessly, it became even more confusing. At this time, the secret flow had already surged in the northern holy city. It is difficult to say exactly when the holy city of the northern regions existed. It hovers high on the land of the northern regions, like a heavenly palace that endures forever. It is said that this holy city existed since the emergence of the human race in the northern regions. Going back can be traced back to the ancient times. Perhaps countless ancient emperors once sat in the city late at night, like the great emperor without a beginning, gazing down on various aspects of the human world. However, there is no immortal inheritance between heaven and earth, nor is there an eternal divine city. The holy city hovers over the northern region, and Gao Yi vaguely remembers being shot down in its ancient times. Looking at the holy city floating in the air in front of him, Gao Yi couldn't help but feel that if the emperor had taken action, not only could it be a holy city, but even 10 holy cities could have been knocked down with one strike. The ancient city is extremely majestic, and the continuous walls of the city are hard to see at a glance. The magnificent city gate tower, reaching a height of 100 meters, looks very oppressive. Entering the city, there are countless palaces and ancient streets that stretch in all directions and are extremely wide. There are many cultivators walking in groups of 3 or 2, and Gao Yi has already recognized many disciples of the major sections. Fortunately, his attire and temperament have greatly changed now, otherwise he might have been recognized. 2 months ago, many major sects in Donghuang had gathered in the holy city to privately exchange ideas with outsiders from these regions. Gao Yi, who had been squatting near Mount Guhuang for a long time, heard that there were outsiders from the holy city who loudly declared that they would share the immortal emperor's divine treasure with the major sects of the Beidou and invite cultivators from all over the world to discuss major plans. Gao Yi felt a bit embarrassed and angry for a moment, and was busy with nothing. It took Gao Yi half a month to rush to the holy city, ready to see what conspiracy this group of people had. There are hundreds of people in the magnificent central heavenly palace, where cultivators from various traditions of the Big Dipper gather. In addition, there are also some scattered cultivators sitting in pairs outside the crowd. Gao Yi couldn't help but feel a little emotional as he looked at the cultivators present. Now that the end of the Dharma era has just passed, the entire world has shown signs of recovery. The quality of the Beta cultivators is very high, and starting from the scene is half a step of great ability. Among the crowd, there are also various inheritors of the sect, all of whom are the king of slaying the way, as if the rare golden age has arrived. There was a big beard sitting beside Gao Yi, and there was no sign of cultivation. Big Beard looked at Gao Yi with some curiosity, tilted his body and rubbed against him, saying, "How did you come in, kid? Why didn't those bird people at the door stop you?" Listening to the voice of the bearded man beside him, Gao Yi gave him a fleeting glance and made a rebellious expression, saying, "If you want to stop me, just give it a try." After hearing this, Big Beard was surprised for a moment and immediately understood why this kid had been following him all along. This kid used himself as a ticket, following behind his buttocks with such an expression. No wonder others didn't dare to stop him. "You're not very old, you're a ghost. I think you'll be a disaster sooner or later." Big Beard teased Gao Yi with some amusement, and then asked seriously, "You borrowed my wind. This is at least worth 5,000 pounds. How are you going to pay?" Gao Yi looked at De Hu and his expression changed. Suddenly, he turned his head with joy and said, "Master, why are you there?" He lifted his buttocks and ran away. De Huzi was taken aback for a moment and looked at Gao Yi, who was running away immediately. He also reached out with his palm and rolled Gao Yi back, saying, "Sit down for me, there's no way you want to run." Gao Yi, who had been rolled back, smiled even more unsightly than crying and begged for mercy towards Big Beard, "Senior, I don't even have a source of half a pound, I really can't give it." Big Beard was amused by Gao Yi. "This kid is really a living treasure. Senior, I have some news." "I don't know if it's worth 5,000 pounds, Gao Yi said pleasantly as he looked at De Hu. "What news? Let's hear it." Big Beard obviously didn't take it to heart, but he still pretended to be interested. Without hesitation, Gao Yi leaned into De Huzi's ear and whispered, "Not long ago, I heard people say there are descendants of the immortal heavenly prince in the ancient Emperor Mountain." Big Beard was taken aback and never expected this dead child to say these things to him. There are so many people in this hall now, and once this news is released, it will be overwhelming. For a moment, dozens of pairs of eyes in the main hall stared over, and Big Beard was startled. I saw him jump up like a rabbit, waving his hand repeatedly and saying, "I don't know this dead child, it's none of my business." As Big Beard spoke, he slipped far away. Suddenly, Gao Yi was watched by everyone, but he couldn't help but continue, "Senior, why are you running so far? Is this news worth 5,000 pounds? Little brother, if this news is true, not to mention 5,000 pounds, it's worth 500,000 pounds. A man walked over from a distance, with a flowing robe and a jade crown on his face, exuding a graceful demeanor. In fact, many people in the main hall heard Gao Yi's words. However, only this man dared to step forward and answer the conversation, and for a moment everyone couldn't help but stare at him. The words of the primordial patriarch are far from accurate. It is difficult to determine whether the immortal emperor really exists, let alone whether he is his heir. It is worthless for me to see this news. A man also stepped out of the crowd and spoke out. Not necessarily, I quite believe that the immortal emperor really exists. If he really doesn't exist, how can the ancient supreme beings want to explore? That's right. If it really doesn't exist, why did the Emperor Dojang smash the dojo he left behind in his later years? It may not necessarily be the immortal Emperor's dojo, but it may also be other supreme dojo that has not left a name. The discussion began in the main hall for a while, but the leader of the Taichu sect walked up to Gao Yi and carefully observed her. After a moment, he slowly spoke up and said, "Where did you hear the news, little brother?" Gao Yi was also engrossed in the discussion and suddenly saw the person in front of him approaching to ask questions. He was also taken aback and immediately spoke up. It was a person he met by chance outside the ancient imperial mountain. He even said that the immortal emperor was a fairy phoenix wandering in the mortal world. If he caught his descendants, he might become immortals. A group of people in the main hall suddenly fell silent, each as if they had seen a ghost, staring at Gao Yi in astonishment. The leader of the primordial sect was also extremely shocked. Looking at the young man in front of him, he felt a little thirsty for a moment. "What are you talking nonsense about, kid? Huan Xianfeng, why don't you talk about real dragons? Empty mouth, white teeth, are you really here to find me happy?" Gao Yi listened to these words with an innocent expression on her face, and couldn't help but retort with some anger, "It's not what I said, it's all that person. Why are you in such a hurry? No one knows who that person is. This is not a place for you to talk nonsense now. Hurry up and get out of here." For a moment, there were constant mockery in his ears, and Gao Yi stood in place with a pale face, feeling a bit embarrassed. Gao Yi pretended to be embarrassed and stood up, walking towards the entrance of the palace, clenching his fists along the way. At the entrance of the palace, Gao Yi suddenly shouted, "Go away, go away." That person said his name is Chuaning, and the heir of the immortal heavenly prince is sitting in the ancient imperial mountain, on the eye of the source of creation. As soon as the words fell, they turned into a burst of smoke, revealing that they were just a Taoist palace deity. Chuaning, who is it? It seems like an ancient person who left a name during the mythological era. Seeking collection recommendations. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. All about performance, seeking collection and recommendation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. All about performance, seeking collection and recommendation. Hehe, this water is getting muddy. Gao Yi hid in a secret room and chuckled. The truth is the sharp sword. He doesn't believe that his performance in the central heavenly palace was not exciting enough just now. All he needs to do is wait for the major inheritors to go crazy. Even if they don't fall for it, it's okay. After all, there are Kunlun remnants who can be tricked. That group of Kunlun remnants must know something. After all, the immortal emperor had cooperated with the Kunlun tribe. With the passage of time and the end of the ancient times, the Baidu tribe has fallen into slumber. There is no reason to miss such a good opportunity. I just don't know what they really like. Can it be a miracle medicine? The holy city is very large, and there are many secret rooms that can be practiced. As early as today, Gao Yi found a place to practice in an inn for several days. When I saw various inheritors appearing in the central palace of the holy city this morning, Gao Yi released the Taoist temple deity and mixed in with the beards all the way. He even performed well, which made me laugh when I thought about it. I don't know what the Dao Yen people from the Eternal Star Domain are up to, so Gao Yi left the Chamber of Secrets after some contemplation. Now that I have just performed at the central palace of the holy city, it is not time to leave to avoid being caught. A person strolled around the holy city, looking at the coming and going cultivators. Gao Yi felt a bit lonely, walking alone here, as if he was a passerby in this ancient history. Now it's a bit too distant for future generations, and I don't know how many people will know their names forever. I don't know if I can leave footprints in this world, so that I won't be forgotten. When I silently age, I lament the emptiness of my life. Gao Yi can only walk alone in this era, silently competing for crossing the river. Little brother, do you want to gamble on a stone? Walking on the roadside, Gao Yi was mesmerized by the constant cries on both sides of the road. This northern region gambling stone has a long history and cannot be gambled for decades or even millions of years, which is outrageous. After refusing to gamble, Gao Yi did not linger and continued on, playing in the holy city for a long time. I don't know when there were more cultivators searching for people in the holy city. Gao Yi estimated that they were looking for him. After all, there were too many spectators today. Watching the waves of cultivators searching for people leave calmly, Gao Yi silently returned to the inn, preparing to observe the changes and practice in seclusion for a while. Haven't you found it yet? In the magnificent palace, a man stood on the back of his hand, admiring the nearby scenery, and said to his subordinates behind him. Report to the sect leader, the god must have changed his appearance. There is no one in the city with a similar appearance. Well, let's go down. The primordial sect leader was not surprised, and the young man was probably fully prepared for it. It's not surprising if he can't be found. After receiving a response from the subordinates behind, they left directly without any hesitation. Huh, are you serious? If this continues, I suspect you really want to become an immortal. How dare the immortal phoenix of the immortal realm say it? I saw a man sitting not far away, looking at the primordial sect leader with a puzzled expression. Upon hearing this, the leader of the Taichu sect turned around and looked at him with a serious expression, saying, in ancient times, there were indeed rumors that the immortal emperor was reincarnated as an immortal phoenix, and some people said that he was flowing with 5-colored immortal blood. That man, who is also the leader of the sect, has naturally heard of it, but it is difficult to say whether this kind of thing is true or false, and it is difficult to judge its credibility, so he naturally has some disbelief. Watching the serious expression of the primordial sect leader, the man couldn't help but feel a bit surprised. His good friend seemed to truly believe him. I couldn't help but say, perhaps it's just a special bloodline. There are some constitutions in this world, and the color of blood is different from that of ordinary people. Speaking of which, I have seen a cultivator with golden blood hundreds of years ago, but unfortunately I have never seen him again since then. The man thought to himself, inexplicably thinking of the person he met by chance hundreds of years ago, and said with some unclear meaning. The leader of the primordial sect did not say much when looking at the man, and the rumors in a few words were indeed difficult to convince people. If the news goes out today, naturally someone will believe it. I already have a premonition that a storm is about to arise, the leader of the Taichu sect said to the man with a serious expression on his face. Make plans early. I have already passed on the message to the senior members of the sect, so hurry up. The leader of the Taichu sect continued to advise. In a few days, the countless inheritances of the entire eastern wilderness were boiling, and a large number of cultivators set off one after another to prepare for the holy city. Have you heard about it? There are descendants of the immortal emperor on Mount Guhuang. I heard about it a long time ago, but the news is incorrect. What is the heir of the undead emperor? The undead emperor once broke through the immortal realm and took away a descendant of an immortal from it. The news became more and more outrageous as it spread, from the descendants of the immortal emperor to the descendants of immortals, then from the descendants of immortals to the remains of immortals, and finally even more outrageous, directly turning into the fact that immortals were captured from the immortal realm by the immortal emperor and suppressed at the foot of the ancient imperial mountain. For a moment, the wind and clouds moved all around the holy city, and countless cultivators began to gather near the ancient imperial mountain. Even the name of Chuanying has been traced back to ancient history. During the mythological era, Emperor Zun's right arm and the first divine general of the ancient heavenly court. The claim of being one life apart from the emperor can prove the unparalleled hero who claims to be respected. Emperor Zun sealed it into the divine source for future generations, but unexpectedly, it has now emerged. The rumors that are difficult to distinguish between true and false have added a bit of credibility. The era of mythology is not far from millions of years ago. If it weren't for the inheritance of the great religion and the search of ancient books, it would be difficult to see any trace of it. That boy didn't see it with his own eyes, how could he know this name? Gao Yi, who was hiding in the inn, heard several circulating versions in the inn and was somewhat stunned. It has to be said that passers-by's thinking is really scattered, and his small actions now are just throwing bricks to attract jade. Take a look at this transmission. If it weren't for him being the initiator, I guess even he would have believed it. It's over, what's wrong with me now? I'm a gentleman. Gao Yi swore that he definitely didn't mean to deceive others, at most he accidentally said something that shouldn't have been said. Day after day, the contented Gao Yi watched the increasing movements of the major inheritances, knowing in his heart that the immortal emperor would not jump out for his eternal plan. Now, he probably lay his body somewhere. A few days ago, while practicing in the ancient imperial mountain, Gao Yi discovered that the immortal emperor had moved his nest, probably to another place to gnaw on the body. If these inheritors were to take action now, the biggest possibility they would face is the immortal Taoist. I don't know if I can withstand it. I hope the Kunlun remnants have a backup, otherwise there is a high probability that I will have to find Jingxian and be exiled to the Eternal Star Domain. Gao Yi continued to practice while calculating. Since breaking through the 4 extreme secret realm, Gao Yi has once again felt a sense of breakthrough. Calculating the time, after only half a year of entering the 4 extreme secret realm, there has been progress again, and the speed is astonishing. If it weren't for Gao Yi's plan to suffer from thunder tribulations, he would have considered himself mediocre. As we all know, his cultivation speed is fast, and it is also possible for him to stop at the 2nd level of the Sendai heavenly realm and enter the 4 extreme secret realm. Only when thunder tribulations come and break through the realm can he be considered a genius. Gao Yi was not in a hurry to cross the tribulation, but rather thought about whether he could use the thunder tribulation to do some writing. Yi Fan like to do this. I'll give it a try myself today. Ball, come and collect some recommended items. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Underground Demons, Seeking Collection and Recommendation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Underground Demons, Seeking Collection and Recommendation. The Holy City has been bustling for a long time, and since the big news was released by Gao Yi that day, it has not been able to stop for a long time. Over the course of half a month, many cultivators came one after another, and the famous figures who had been passed down for a long time all reappeared in the Holy City. For a moment, everyone felt the momentum of wind and rain approaching. Some weak cultivators had already begun to evacuate this holy city, and some even left the northern region and went far away, afraid of being harmed by the fish in the pond. In a palace in the holy city, a group of great religious monks were sitting in the banquet, surrounded by several monks who were constantly discussing. Jingxian Taoist friend, is it true that you can make a move? We have lost a lot of people in the ancient Huangshan mountain, and what we have lost is the essence of the eastern wilderness. I saw an old man at the table looking at the man not far away. Jingxian's face turned pale as he arched his hand at the old man and said, "Don't worry, Senior Yu. My master recently traveled to Beidou and has just arrived in the holy city. This time, I am here to assure you that I will not break my promise." After finishing speaking, he kept talking to everyone at the table about his master's travel experience, claiming that his master was the ultimate saint. His trip to the eastern wilderness had yielded fruitful results, and he needed to go back and make breakthroughs in this matter. Everyone was not surprised when they heard this statement. They had heard it several times, but they did not see the mysterious master appear. This time, they heard that his master had arrived at the holy city, so they naturally wanted to see for themselves. Immediately, a group of cultivators also spoke out one after another, all of them saying they wanted to see the great sage's grace, hoping that Jingxian would not refuse. Of course we won't disappoint you all. My master has decided to meet you in the holy city in 3 days and discuss together the matter of opening the ancient imperial mountain treasure trove. Jingxian didn't hesitate and spoke up directly this time. Upon hearing this, the cultivators were also excited. Nowadays, rumors about the ancient imperial mountain have become increasingly widespread. If we don't take action, there may be more forces involved. It is difficult to predict how much trouble it will be. The elders of my sect have long been waiting for the great sage in the holy city, said Senior Yu with a bow. A group of cultivators also immediately began to agree, and after the discussion, they also exchanged glasses and toasted for a while. Senior brother, are you really going to Mount Gu Huang this time? It's unclear how you will be buried at the Supreme Tomb. After the banquet, when the cultivators left, Dao Yan looked at Jing Xian and asked in confusion. As a rare genius in the world, his master spared no effort in teaching Dao Yan, and among his disciples, he was highly valued. To repay Li, Dao Yan also did not want his master to be robbed in the ancient imperial mountain. Don't worry, master naturally had plans ahead of time. This time, Gu Huang Mountain is just a cover. Jing Xian looked at Dao Yan and couldn't help but comfort him. Do you have any other plans? Dao Yan was also surprised and curious upon hearing this. It's natural to refine the 9th level evolution liquid. Jing Xian's words surprised Dao Yan. Dao Yan was a bit mesmerized for a moment. The 9th level evolution liquid was enough to make the great sage go further. It was a treasure that his master had always dreamed of. Unexpectedly, his master was really about to refine it. I'm afraid I came to Beidou for this reason. No wonder master separated from his fellow disciples when he arrived at Beidou. As the burial star of the great emperor, many ancient supreme beings came here to establish and inherit their teachings. After death, he was buried here, accumulating more than half of the divine medicines in the entire universe, which were the materials needed for the 9th level evolution liquid. I just don't know which divine medicine this great saint from outside the domain is interested in. Just as the great sage outside the domain was preparing to make his official debut, Gao Yi had already returned to the vicinity of Mount Gu Huang. The Qi Long tribe, a remnant of the Kunlun tribe from the ancient star of Honghuang, has been moving continuously recently. The campsite, which used to occupy a considerable area, has now been expanded into a quite large city, located near the ancient imperial mountain. And the Kunlun remnant tribes are united, and it is estimated that other tribes have also arrived, perhaps even the living fossils within the tribe have come to the Beidou. A large number of cultivators gathered at the ancient imperial mountain, and the nearby oasis was somewhat overcrowded. Many cultivators did not want to miss the opportunity to fish in troubled waters. Underneath Mount Gu Huang, in a deep passage. Looking at the bloodstains in front of him, Gao Yi looked inexplicable. During this period, many cultivators have already begun to dig holes around the ancient imperial mountain, including some masters of source magic and underground rules. Gao Yi encountered a group of skilled fighters nearby and joined in halfway, directly starting to dig and steal holes, preparing to enter the mountain. He had originally planned to wait for the major inheritors to take action first and observe the changes in search of opportunities, but found that the major inheritors had secretly entered the ancient Emperor Mountain, and he couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Now that I have just joined the company and haven't worked for 2 days, something happened immediately. Gao Yi couldn't help but doubt whether he was a teammate of Tianke. At the beginning, it was outside the penalty area, and now it's even more so at Mount Gu. What's going on, the third person? I saw a disheveled cultivator appear in the dim ground, shaking the torch. He looked directly at Gao Yi and asked. Crouching on the ground and carefully observing the bloodstains, Gao Yi was awakened in thought. He turned around with lingering fear and said, I didn't know what was going on just now. Suddenly, a black shadow flashed by, and Brother Li was dragged directly into this place. When I chased after him here, I only found this blood stain. In his words, he couldn't help but look into the dark passage not far away, as if there were wild beasts ahead. The cultivator was also surprised and quickly pushed away Gao Yi, looking down at the bloodstains on the ground. Gao Yi also pretended to be panicked and quickly hid behind the cultivator. For a moment, there was silence in the passage, followed by a strange noise, and several cultivators chased after them. At this moment, a group of cultivators looked at Gao Yi and the disheveled cultivator in surprise, and quickly asked, "Big brother, what's going on? Why did you suddenly turn back?" Just now, Gao Yi was walking in the tunnel leading to the ancient Emperor Mountain. The broken cultivator was dragged away after making a loud scream. Gao Yi was walking at the end of the team and was also startled while chatting with the cultivator. He couldn't help but chase after him. And the big brother also followed closely behind, following over. The big brother squatting on the ground also looked at the bloodstains for a long time without a word. With a serious expression, he twisted a handful of black hair next to the bloodstains and suddenly turned back, saying, "Don't ask any more questions. Keep walking, the third one has broken." As he spoke, his expression gradually slowed down. Now that he was blocked by demons and monsters in the back, he may not be able to survive. Generally, underground demons and monsters are not afraid of his cultivation as a quadrupole cultivator, but now this is in the ancient Imperial Mountain. The demon clearly cut off their path and went to fight hard. He didn't dare to say that he had to give up his life today, so he had to continue moving forward. Maybe there was a way out, and he could live a little longer. After finishing speaking, the big brother continued, "Hurry up and keep moving forward. Don't think too much. We have no way back, and in times of crisis, we should not act recklessly." For a moment, many cultivators looked at each other and dared not speak. After a long time, they finally made up their minds to turn around and walk towards the center of the ancient Emperor Mountain. Gao Yi was also surprised to see the elder brother who had consciously left behind his severed head. He was also a man. Looking at the deep passage in front of him, Gao Yi was also shocked. As soon as he entered the ancient Imperial Mountain, he encountered a crisis and didn't know what he would encounter in the future. Keep working hard and achieving platinum in your dream last night. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Who should collect the corpse, seeking collection and recommendation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Who should collect the corpse, seeking collection and recommendation. In the deep tunnel, 7 or 8 cultivators are constantly exploring. Gao Yi walked behind the team, constantly chatting with the elder brother, named Fan Long, who was the leading elder brother of this group of cultivators. They are all casual cultivators who, by chance, gather together and search for opportunities in the mountains and rivers all year round. They are not good men and women. The struggle between cultivators is difficult to distinguish between good and evil, and Fan Long of the Great Han Dynasty also revealed in his words that in order to practice, it is not just common to search graves and dig tombs, but also to dismantle human bones. During the conversation, Gao Yi was not surprised, and it was difficult for him to say that he wouldn't do such a thing. All things in life are like this, and involuntarily they always run through. The tunnel is extremely deep, and even after several days of excavation, it did not reach the foot of Mount Guhuan. After walking for a long time, it finally reached the end of the tunnel excavated yesterday. At the end of the tunnel that was originally blocked, a large hole had already been opened in the wall dug out yesterday, like the traces of some creature drilling out all the way. The hole left behind was extremely deep, and a gust of dark wind blew out in the howling. As the wind blew, a group of cultivators stood trembling in place with frost on their cold eyebrows. Fan Long looked at the big hole with a look of horror on his face. He couldn't help but walk to the entrance of the cave, summoning his divine power. His eyes lit up with a flash of divine light and he looked into the cave. With a painful cry, everyone looked at Fan Long, whose eyes were bleeding with fear. No, the evil energy in this cave is amazing. Fast, 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 go, Fan Long said with a frightened expression as he covered his bleeding eyes. He didn't want to control the demons behind him anymore. I'm afraid the demons ahead are even more terrifying than those behind him. Suddenly, Gao Yi leaped forward, turned around, and shot out a faint light. In the blink of an eye, he took a move against the demon behind him. The sudden incident woke up a group of cultivators, and after seeing the situation clearly, they all resorted to sacrificial means to fight behind them. I saw a demon in human form who was obstructed from the surprise attack, standing over 9 feet tall and covered in black hair. In the midst of the demon's roar, his body was engulfed in black light, and in the blink of an eye, he rushed towards the crowd. Countless black hairs intertwined like tentacles, swirling around the black light. With the demon's movements, he directly pierced through 2 will-see cultivators. The screams of, "Ah!" were incessant in my ears. In the narrow tunnel for a moment, there was a great crisis, with countless tentacles dancing wildly and repeatedly damaging the cultivators. Fan Long's eyes were also dripping with blood, and he roared in anger, directly sacrificing his own Taoist temple deities to fight. Gao Yi looked at the chaos in front of him and planned to retreat, sacrificing himself to the palace gods. As soon as the deity Gao Yi made a move, he also kept taking out a magic sword from the wheel C. The figure turned, and the long sword waved in waves of divine light, fighting against the tentacles of the demon. Many gods followed Gao Yi to confront the demon, but unexpectedly blocked it for a while. Pushi, the good times didn't last long, only a strange sound was heard, and the demon struck again, directly piercing through Fan Long's deity, causing Fan Long to bleed heavily and inflict even more damage. The originally deadlocked battle situation took a sharp turn for the worse, and Gao Yi also split open the black-haired tentacles that attacked during the crisis, turning over and coming to Fan Long's side. Looking at the corpses on the ground, I realized that only myself and Fan Long were still alive. Gao Yi didn't hesitate to pull up Fan Long without any nonsense, and as the deity dissipated, he jumped into the big hole in the wall. Turning around, let the magic sword in hand fly out directly, and for a moment, the magic sword was also full of divine light. Accompanied by an explosion, the cave entrance collapsed and Gao Yi and Fan Long slid down the drilled cave. The cave entrance was extremely deep, and the 2 of them continued to slide down the terrain for a long time. With their divine power surging, Gao Yi held Fan Long and landed steadily. "Cough cough, you really have a great fortune." Fan Long couldn't help but cough twice, struggling to straighten his waist and say, his words sighing. After releasing his hand, Gao Yi was looking around. Upon hearing this, he was also somewhat moved and turned to look at him, saying, "It's just a pity that your brothers are not willing. I don't know if they are unwilling on the road to the underworld." In the darkness, Fan Long was also deeply wounded, but he still regained his composure and said in a voice, "The cultivator has set foot on the path of cultivation and is ready. I believe there is nothing to be unwilling to accept. Words are more like talking about oneself." Gao Yi didn't say much and even smiled in the darkness. "Let's go, it seems like we're almost at the center of the ancient imperial mountain. Didn't you say that the evil energy below is amazing? The old ones may cause accidents." Gao Yi also sensed something suspicious of peeking around, feeling chilly all over. "Go that way, the most weak evil energy is there, maybe it's a way of survival." Fan Long also forcefully operated his divine spell again, pointing directly to the direction after seeing it accurately. This is an underground space, not particularly spacious. A yellow hidden river slowly flows from the front, with bright light at its source but extremely dark at its flow direction. The howling Yin wind also blows out from that dark place, and at the same time, the Yin wind howls like billions of ghosts howling fiercely, making people hair. "Are you sure? Maybe that place is actually a dead end." Gao Yi looked at the river in front of him, feeling a little creepy, and turned around to say. Listening to Gao Yi's words, Fan Long was also a bit depressed. As an authority figure, could it be difficult to see correctly? Gao Yi did not deliberately argue with him. Whenever he turned his head to look at Fan Long's direction, his scalp tingled in the light. That feeling, similar to facing the Taichu penalty area, actually made Gao Yi uneasy. Gao Yi then expressed his feelings, and Fan Long was also surprised, especially when he heard that Gao Yi had faced the Taichu penalty area before, and now he had the same feeling at that time, which was also a bit startled and heart-pounding. Looking at the bright light not far away, Fan Long became more and more frightened. He turned his head to look at the yellow hidden river in front of him and suddenly retreated in fear. I once heard people say that there are various strange phenomena in the places where the supreme figures lie, and the hidden river in front of me may be the yellow spring. I didn't expect that now, thinking about where this yellow spring comes from, it may be the place where the supreme corpse lies. Fan Long was also aware of this later, and immediately realized after reminding him, seeing some things in the east and west. Fan Long also became afraid afterwards. His half-hearted feng shui burial technique almost caused a mistake. The place where the supreme corpse was subdued was filled with evil energy, and under the interference of the qi machine, he did not notice it. I just couldn't believe that the undead emperor was lying in front of him. Does this mean they are only one step away from the divine treasure? Fan Long felt a little excited when he thought about the excitement, and couldn't help but say his conjecture to Gao Yi. Gao Yi's face was full of horror, and he, who knew the truth, naturally wouldn't be optimistic. If the immortal emperor were lying in front of him, who would stir up the future? The immortal emperor has a shocking secret, which may indicate who died in the ancient emperor's mountain pit. Now that the supreme body is right ahead, it is possible to see limbs and broken arms. Are you crazy? The immortal emperor must have died through enlightenment. How could he leave a body behind? Maybe someone else is lying in front of him, so be clear-headed. Looking at Fan Long, who was eager to try, Gao Yi also said directly. After being splashed with a basin of cold water, Fan Long also woke up and inexplicably thought of many things. He couldn't help but say to Gao Yi, so, in the future, the Supreme Emperor broke into the Emperor's burial ground and lay his body here. Is it possible that he was left behind as a backup? Shocked, Fan Long then had another conversation with Gao Yi, surprised by the depth of the ancient Emperor's landscape and stopped for a long time. Not long after, Fan Long was urged by Gao Yi to leave this place and walked towards the darkness not far away, turning back as he walked. Looking at the darkness in front of him, Gao Yi was only pondering in his heart about the place where the supreme corpse lay. Is it a substitute for the immortal emperor's hunting and battle that the holy emperor cannot achieve? A generation of supreme beings lies buried underground, with limbs and arms broken and no one converging. I'm working hard, thank you all for your encouragement. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. In the Dark, Seeking Collections and Recommendations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. In the Dark, Seeking Collections and Recommendations, in the dark underground space, accompanied by the sound of flowing yellow springs. Gao Yi penetrated into the darkness as the yellow spring extended, and the howling yin wind blew over the two of them. Listening to the howling yin wind around, Gao Yi was somewhat moved. If these human wonders were not traversed, who could have seen them? After walking for a while, the two finally saw the end of the yellow spring. Not far away, there was a ravine that cut off the yellow spring river and made it disappear into the void. In surprise, Gao Yi couldn't help but walk to the ravine and bend down to look down. I saw this ravine as if it were a dry valley, with a large hole appearing inside. Countless yin qi rose out of it, rolling up gusts of yin wind, oscillating back and forth in this underground space. Fan Long walked up to Gao Yi and looked at the large cave in the ravine, speculating, this used to be an underground river. You see, there are still some traces of erosion in this valley, but this big cave is quite strange. Gao Yi listened to the speculation and felt a little clear in his heart. The ancient imperial mountain was indeed different from later generations, and everything was shrouded in unknowns that made it difficult to grasp. After careful consideration, Gao Yi couldn't help but say to Fan Long, the back road has been cut off. We are deeply trapped in the Jedi and can only survive. No matter what is in that cave, we have no way out now and can only continue to explore further. As he spoke, he flew towards the cave entrance and looked at the incredibly deep and difficult to see hole. Without hesitation, Gao Yi jumped down. Fan Long was also startled when he looked at it. After hesitating for a moment, his hair suddenly stood on end, and he also hurriedly drilled into the hole. Suddenly, a black light flashed through the place where the two of them were staying, cutting open the void. Damn it, you're not being righteous anymore. Don't even say it clearly. In a whirlwind, the two appeared from the sky and fell into a palace. After landing, Fan Long couldn't help but complain about Gao Yi's lack of moral principles in the martial arts world. Gao Yi remained silent, just staring at the palace in ecstasy. Ignoring Fan Long's incessant chatter, Gao Yi couldn't help but explore the furnishings in the palace. The quaint palace is not very large, and there are not many decorations. Apart from tables, and candlesticks, there is no extra thing. The palace has no entrance, and there are 4 walls in the east, west, north, south, and north. One of the walls hangs a picture scroll, so let's consider this wall as the north. The painting scroll is very long, with some magical things painted on it, such as real dragons soaring in the sky, Xuanwu exploring the sea, and immortal cultivation. The painter seems to want to explore various aspects of the immortal world through the brush. Is this painting about the fairyland? Fan Long looked at the scroll and was also lost in thought, speculating about the scene in the painting. Maybe, if the painting is really about the immortal realm, the person who painted it might be the immortal emperor. Gao Yi actually believed that this was painted by the immortal emperor. After all, Emperor Undead accidentally fell into the mortal world when he was young, and after becoming a Taoist, he even wanted to return to the immortal realm. When he was alone, he probably felt a deep sadness in his heart, and it was not surprising that he could draw paintings to comfort himself. No way, if it were really painted by the immortal emperor, it would have been millions of years. How could it have been so well preserved? Fan Long was a bit skeptical, and in his words, he walked up to the painting, wanting to explore its authenticity. Gao Yi also hurriedly stopped it as he watched. If it were truly a token of the emperor's affection, he probably wouldn't be able to touch it recklessly. After being stopped by Gao Yi, Fan Long didn't know what to do for a while and felt a bit helpless. He couldn't help but say, the situation is probably not good now. Let's find a way out. Gao Yi readily agreed, and after responding, he also searched in the palace. Gao Yi looked at the furnishings in the palace and found that the immortal emperor had no place to rest, only a futon placed in front of the painting. It is estimated that the immortal emperor usually sits on a futon every day, and the seclusion would last for hundreds of years. Gao Yi thought of something and quickly sat on the futon. After a moment of meditation, he realized that the futon was a treasure. As soon as I practiced, I felt that the essence of heaven and earth was converging towards me, and there were constantly wonderful sounds of the Tao. Even the preaching sound I heard in the Taichu ancient mine a while ago became somewhat clear, and there were also a few more understandings. The miraculous effects are astonishing. Gao Yi estimated that 99% of this futon was woven from the branches of the ancient tea tree of Wudao. The immortal emperor has really caused great harm to the ancient tea tree of Wudao. Fan Long, who was not far away, also looked at Gao Yi's strange movements with some curiosity. He walked over and asked, "Do you still have the heart to cultivate at this time?" Gao Yi stood up and looked at Fan Long in a dilemma. Should I tell him? I once saw the scales and claws of the undead emperor in an ancient book, which records that in his later years, the emperor cut down a divine tree and made a whole coffin out of the ancient tea tree of Wudao. Just now, seeing this clump alone here, I thought of this legend. After thinking for a moment, Gao Yi decided not to hide anything and immediately told Fan Long, which left Fan Long speechless. Fan Long walked up to look at the futon and realized it for a moment. He quickly asked, "Are you saying that this futon was made by the immortal emperor using the Wudao tea tree?" Gao Yi looked at him with an eager expression and said, "Not bad. Just now, on a try, this futon should be woven from the tea tree of Wudao." Fan Long stood in the same place, feeling a little surprised. Suddenly, his eyebrows furrowed and his face changed a bit. It took him a long time to take a deep breath and said to Gao Yi, Brother Yi Fan, you saved my life. You didn't have to tell me these things. Now that the opportunity is in your hands, you can accept it. I feel much more comfortable as a whole person, and even more so, I was saved in a difficult situation. Fan Long didn't want to ruin this rare friendship with Gao Yi. Since you don't want to argue with me, I won't refuse anymore. I'll take this futon, Gao Yi said without hesitation, accepting the futon and beckoning Fan Long to continue searching. Now that a divine object has been discovered, there is no reason to let go of the legacy of the immortal emperor. This time, even the floor was bound to be lifted by him. In a moment, the ancient palace was filled with flying chickens and dogs, and the two of them dug 3 feet into the ground. The two of them searched in the ancient palace for half a day and gradually discovered many ancient artifacts. Unfortunately, some of the time was too long, and their divinity had already been lost and turned into waste. However, it was not without gains. Fan Long was unwilling to give up and found a chaotic and stubborn stone resembling a brick under the candlestick. This thing is probably used by the immortal emperor as a candlestick, but if you put it in the hands of a cultivator, polish it well and make a big seal, it may become a divine weapon that can be used in the realm of a sage without any problem. In his lifetime of tumbling in the tomb, he had never seen such a divine object before. Excited, Fan Long held on to the brick and grinned foolishly. I've been a local master for my whole life, and now my luck has finally fallen on me, old Fan. Oh my goodness. Gao Yi looked at the excited Fan Long and was also happy. He shook his head and continued to search for the way out, so as not to be unable to leave this ancient palace. After searching for a long time, even the floor tiles were lifted by the two of them, but they had no idea where the exit was. If you are trapped in the ancient palace now, the joy will be great, which can be regarded as a typical example of extreme happiness leading to sorrow. The two of them were trapped in the ancient palace for a long time, and even how long it had passed was somewhat unclear. It is estimated that it may have been 4 or 5 days, or 7 or 8 days. Gao Yi looked at the painting in front of him, feeling a bit stunned. Xiao Gao, this ancient temple is just this painting. We haven't moved it yet. Didn't you say it's a gift from the immortal emperor? You have to think about it. I've been trapped in the palace all along, and sooner or later we'll have to die inside. While we still have the strength, I'll try my best and maybe we can survive in a desperate situation. Continue to work hard tomorrow and seek support. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Outside the ancient palace, seeking collection and recommendation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Outside the ancient palace, seeking collection and recommendation. Gao Yi stood by the wall, carefully watching the plants and trees in the painting. The true dragon and Xuanwu appeared together, and even immortals practiced in the boundless world, like a fairy world map. But even though the painting was large, it did not cover the entire wall. The two of them were thinking about taking action, but they didn't know where to start. Laughing fingers are all painted, I don't know if they are all people in the painting. Gao Yi looked at the scroll and inexplicably thought of an ancient poem. The ancient palace is quaint and has no doors on all sides. Only in front of me is such a picture scroll. At first glance, I thought it was a painting of the immortal emperor expressing his emotions and didn't dare to move around. Now, after carefully savoring it, I have gained some understanding. We look at the scene in the painting, maybe the person in the painting is also looking at us, thinking that we are just the soldiers in the painting. Gao Yi couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the painting. It was difficult to explain the mystery behind it. He looked at the scenery in the painting and wondered if anyone was also watching him. In a moment of hesitation, Fan Long had already walked over and said with a hint of amusement, "You've thought so much and done so much. Hurry up and find a way to get out." Gao Yi nodded as he listened to Fan Long's words, and after seeing a scene in the painting, he made some inferences. He walked over and gave a finger on it. It is difficult to analyze how many conspiracies there are for people like the immortal emperor, and Gao Yi can only gamble. This picture may be the key to leaving, and once destroyed, he may be trapped in the ancient palace for life. I saw a scene in the painting that was held down by Gao Yi. After being infused with some divine power by Gao Yi, it was originally just a fairyland in the painting, but suddenly rose up and finally transformed from emptiness to reality into a gateway. The door is 3 zhang high and more than 1 zhang wide. The scene inside the door is the stars of the heavens, with strands of chaotic mist hanging down from above. Gao Yi and Fan Long were also delighted as they gazed at each other and walked into the door without hesitation. In a cemetery at the foot of Mount Gu Huang, murals suddenly rippled and 2 figures appeared in an instant. After landing, a sudden chill made the 2 of them quickly observe the surroundings, and Gao Yi looked at the cemetery in surprise. The cemetery is very large, with a forest of graves at first glance, and many murals painted on the surrounding walls. Upon careful observation, it turns out to be a scene of the undead emperor commanding the heavens in the past, with records of divine generals fighting against powerful enemies. The forest was full of scenes from the past, and Gao Yi stared blankly for a long time. This cemetery should be the resting place of the former members of the immortal emperor. Fan Long was seasoned and immediately knew what was going on as he looked at so many tombs, wanting to take action. Gao Yi did not agree, so he needs to leave this place quickly and communicate with him not to make any unnecessary mistakes. The exit of the underground cemetery is just in the distance, and above is a large circular hole with deep darkness flowing inside. It is estimated that it is the same big hole as when the 2 of them just arrived. Gao Yi's walking room also discussed with Fan Long about the strangeness of the large cave, otherwise the 2 would not have directly entered the mural. The immortal emperor has many means, and I don't know what the significance of doing so is. The 2 of them quietly left the cemetery like this, and as they walked, they had already discovered that the foot of Mount Gu Huang was well connected, with small paths everywhere. And I found many cemeteries here, one after another, all in the caves in the mountains. As they approached the ancient imperial mountain, a magical call from somewhere gradually made their scalp tingle. Gao Yi was also surprised. After entering the ancient imperial mountain for a long time, he finally encountered the same situation as Yi Fan. This indicates that they are approaching the center of Mount Gu Huang, and there are living ancient creatures luring them in the distance. Fortunately, the 2 of them were barely able to withstand their cultivation, so they didn't lose their minds at once. Xiao Gao, the situation is getting worse now. We may not be able to get out of this ancient imperial mountain anymore. Fan Long was a bit frustrated, and the road was full of dangers. Finally, he reached the current point, with no way back and unpredictable misfortunes ahead. Gao Yi naturally wouldn't give up just like this. Even if it was a sea of swords and flames, he would have to grit his teeth and cross over to this point. Directly pulling up Fan Long and continuing forward, the 2 of them struggled to resist the demonic summoning. With a loud roar, there seemed to be an earthquake in the ancient Huangshan. The underground space under the ancient imperial mountain couldn't help but shake, even the magical summoning that came was cut off. Gao Yi's face was also filled with joy as she listened to the loud noise. This is an opportunity. Although I'm not sure about the situation, I still have to grasp such a big commotion. Gao Yi walked towards the direction of the loud noise without hesitation, and Fan Long followed closely behind him. The 2 of them searched all the way and gradually found some corpses, but they didn't have time to restrain themselves. In addition, there are also some corpses that are clearly not human, some are ancient creatures, and some are dressed in the clothing of Kunlun remnants. Gao Yi was a bit surprised. Is this a collaboration? Accompanied by more and more corpses, the 2 finally discovered a living cultivator in an ancient temple. However, the other person glanced at them and rushed forward, completely ignoring them. Gao Yi was also surprised. Judging from the situation, there were people and horses from all walks of the ancient imperial mountain who didn't know each other, so he couldn't help but be wary. As they walked forward, louder and louder cries of killing appeared in the ears of the 2. When they arrived at the battlefield, they found that it was a huge square with countless buildings and jade buildings not far away, and several factions were fiercely fighting. Countless cultivators are fighting here, with countless hidden corpses shining in divine light. A large number of ancient creatures are engaged in fierce battles with the invading cultivators. More than 10 people were engaged in fierce battles in the sky above the nearby palace, emitting an earth-shattering aura. If it weren't for deliberate control, the cultivators present would have been lying dead countless times. Gao Yi and Fan Long were hiding in the dark, their hearts beating with fear. This joke was too big. Gao Yi now looks at the chaos he has caused, and the figure of the fierce battle in the air is far beyond his ability to see through. He must be a saint who has been practicing for thousands of years, and those ancient cultivators must also be the former members of the immortal emperor. The whole ancient imperial mountain has become a mess. Don't you know that the immortal queen and the 8 gods will be born? Fan Long was also surprised to see this chaos. The water was too deep and was about to run away. Gao Yi didn't stop him from wanting to leave. After meeting again, they parted ways. Hey, I don't know where the heavenly prince's egg is, I guess it's in that palace. It's so annoying. Gao Yi, who was hiding in the dark, felt a bit helpless. Can it be true that he wants to be shocked by the sky? But this hatred is really full, and I will have to be chased to the ends of the earth in the future. During his contemplation, Gao Yi had already bypassed the bustling square and quietly sneaked under the palace, ignoring the fierce battle above his head as he charged straight into the palace. Ants, die. The ancient sages, who were still fighting fiercely in the sky, were furious as they watched another ant rush towards the emperor's shrine. As they shouted, a divine light rushed towards Gao Yi. Gao Yi had already noticed and quickly turned into a wisp of green smoke drifting towards the nearby area, unexpectedly causing the ancient sage to fail with a single blow. This green smoke is extremely ethereal, as if hiding in the annals of history, like a mist that cannot be dispelled, emitting boundless Tao rhyme. In the blink of an eye, Gao Yi had already rushed into the nearby palace, causing smoke to rise from the ancient sage's head. Strange, what kind of luck is this? As soon as I came in, I saw the divine gold. In the palace, carved beams and painted rafters, and between countless dragon columns, there was a piece of eclosic green gold, which was the size of a wax gourd, on the divine table. Feel free to pick up some balls and recommend collecting them. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. What is Yi Fan's behavior? Seeking collections and recommendations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. What is Yi Fan's behavior? Seeking collections and recommendations. With such a large piece of feathered blue gold in front of him, Gao Yi must consider whether this is the only opportunity in this life. Missed this time, Gao Yi dare not say whether he will encounter such a large piece of divine material next time. Such a large piece of divine gold, even the ancient emperor would be tempted. As soon as Gao Yi saw the divine gold, he rushed forward and directly dragged the divine gold with the divine table into the sea of wheels. The ancient sage was also entangled by a sage, unable to take action to pursue Gao Yi. He could only summon a few ancient creatures to pursue Gao Yi with divine intent. But no one could have imagined that Gao Yi would take advantage of this time to wander through the vast palaces, only to see countless divine objects thrown out by Gao Yi. What ancient medicine, divine weapons, and even a few pieces of divine gold the size of a winter melon flew out of the palace. For a moment, thousands of cultivators watched the divine material falling not far away completely crazy. Even the eternal star domain saint, who was facing off against several divine sources, was also attracted by those divine gold pieces and found it difficult to sustain himself for a while. That's dragon-patterned black gold. I've seen it before in the holy city. Shenzong actually has an old medicine that is over 100,000 years old. The ancient Emperor Mountain is indeed the burial ground of the undead emperor. It's enough to have the former guardians, and there are still so many divine talents, which is crazy. Countless cultivators fell into madness, and even a few saints in the sky couldn't help but join in the fight. The intensity of the battle suddenly increased, and everyone fell into madness in the midst of blood splattering. Dare, you are seeking your own death. In the depths of the palace, in a divine source, a man let out a roar, causing the entire ancient emperor mountain to shake, and the quasi-emperor's aura was overwhelming. I see you don't know what's going on, but you borrowed our immortal bell and haven't returned it yet. You came to ask for it, but you still dare to say it's not there. I saw another burst of shouting, also extremely angry. Are you forcing me to break through the divine source? If not, let's have another battle. You could have been born, let me see what tricks you have. Ah, good, good, good. Force me to come out and fight outside the domain. In just a few words, no one was convinced and directly made the divine general in the divine source angry and ready to be born. As soon as the words fell, a divine light rushed straight into the sky, followed closely by a divine light. Two divine lights, one in front and one behind, rushed out of the ancient imperial mountain and headed straight for the outside world. Gao Yi was also confused when she heard it, so she started fighting. The 8 divine generals are all quasi-emperor cultivators, and if they can compete with such a person, they must also be the same person. However, it is unclear who this person is and whether they have a name in ancient history. However, Gao Yi also knew in his words that the person must be a member of the Kunlun tribe, but he didn't know if it was an antique or a mortal. Gao Yi pondered his thoughts and shuttled back and forth in the palace, searching for treasures and the heavenly prince, strolling leisurely in the courtyard like entering an uninhabited realm. Those ancient creatures couldn't catch up with him at all and could only eat dust behind Gao Yi's buttocks. It was another search, but unfortunately, this palace was too vast. After so long, we couldn't find the heavenly prince and divine phoenix immortal medicine in the stone. Gao Yi was not discouraged, but also broke into a palace. There are countless scripture collections in this palace, and some individual bookshelves even have scriptures preserved in divine gold. Gao Yi is also like a locust, not even looking at it, and even the scriptures with their bookshelves are all swept into the sea of wheels. For a moment, the several ancient creatures chasing him were so angry that they quickly shouted and killed him. The divine light overflowed, and various divine spells shone brilliantly. Gao Yi did not engage in battle at all, but quickly fled in the form of green smoke, only causing several ancient creatures to roar with anger. After running a long distance, Gao Yi finally showed her figure and turned around to look at several ancient creatures, mocking them and highlighting a hatred-full man. In an instant, Gao Yi's heart tightened and he didn't have time to dodge. He could only turn into smoke and dodge a blow in an instant. I saw that the place where Gao Yi had just stood was directly shattered, and the entire palace next to him was flattened. Amidst the smoke and dust, another wave of ripples shook through, and everything around Gao Yi was shaken into dust. Angry and ashamed, the ancient sages used their heavy hands, and even the tiny dust was shattered by the divine spell once again. The green smoke transformed by Gao Yi trembled in the aftermath of the sage's attack, watching the enraged sage drift outward, ready to slip away. The ancient sages naturally wouldn't let Gao Yi slip away like this. He was shocked by Gao Yi's consecutive evasion of his divine spells. Now that he saw this shameless thief trying to slip away, he naturally wouldn't let him go as he pleased. I saw him casually patting, and the boundless void surged like a painting paper, sealing the smoke that Gao Yi had turned into, and then transforming into a painting scroll. I wipe, what's this method? So powerful. Gao Yi was sealed in the painting of the void, but he dared not reveal his figure. He remained in the painting like clouds and smoke, secretly surprised by the many methods of this sage. Since the recent period of seclusion, Gao Yi has long been confident that he can go to all kinds of Jedi in the world. He never expected that his first actual battle would be sealed off. It's not a good start. The sage also breathed a sigh of relief as he looked at Gao Yi, who had been sealed off. This little thief was truly amazing in his methods, and even such a decisive blow was avoided. I'm afraid this kid isn't some descendant of the ancient emperor, is he? Master the forbidden methods of the ancient emperor. If it weren't for mastering the divine technique, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to take this kid and can only watch this little thief slip away. Wrap up the painting, even the sages dare not let this thief appear outside the painting again. Gao Yi is constantly floating in the painting. Although his divine technique can make him turn into smoke and ignore attacks, being locked in this painting is still powerful and cannot be used. He can only secretly think about whether to use his killer mace. No, we need to hurry. Gao Yi looked out of the picture and saw many cultivators fighting together, knowing in his heart that he had to trigger the thunder calamity. Otherwise, after these cultivators have almost died, even if they trigger the thunder calamity, they may have to be pinched by these sages with one hand carrying the thunder calamity. Now it is necessary to trigger the thunder calamity, let numerous cultivators accompany him to cross the calamity, and let thousands of thunder seas descend together, in order to let these sages cast a wary eye. If you want to do it, Gao Yi didn't hesitate. He immediately stirred up a Taoist path and began to lead the world to calamity. The heavenly calamity came and went, and in a moment, thunder clouds began to gather in the ancient Emperor Mountain. Thunder beams slashed towards the sages who carried the void painting scroll around them. Ah! How could a heavenly calamity strike me? The sage was also surprised and didn't react for a moment. Subconsciously, he just struck and scattered the thunder. Originally, Gao Yi had a great calamity, but now with a single strike from the sage, this sea of thunder has become irritable. Countless sages of lightning struck fiercely, directly overturning the ancient sages. Damn it, it's a scam, it's a creation. The sage immediately understood, his 7 orifices smoky with anger, and he cursed repeatedly. I saw him quickly throw away the picture scroll, his face changing as if his son had died. After throwing out the picture scroll, he quickly hid and prepared to cross the sky before speaking. Gao Yi was struck by lightning to create a painting, and the person who was also struck was flipping back and forth, enduring the pain. Setting up the divine rainbow, he ran towards the crowded area, and for a moment, the thunder shone brightly. Damn it, who is so immoral? Having a son doesn't mean having an asshole. Damn it, who's so cunning? Don't let me catch you, don't chop, I'll make it. Don't come over, Bastard, you're so disgusting. I made it, remember to pick up bubbles. End of this chapter.